Hey guys, welcome back. Obviously, I'm here again in Manila based on the background behind me. Before I give you guys my post-show thoughts from WNBF Taiwan, just wanted to go through the one day out recap real quick because I feel kind of bad leaving it out. I did have a lot of fun that day. It was a pretty normal day, I would say, for one day out. We woke up, had breakfast, of course, and then we went on to Star Fitness. So Star Fitness, one of my favorite gyms in Taiwan. The last time I visited Taiwan, I think around May or June, that was probably one of my favorite finds. Super complete. They have a lot of Panata equipment. I think like 80 or 90% of their stuff is Panata. And then they have a couple of Gym Leco pieces. Just a few, but probably the favorite Gym Leco pieces that I've tried ever. So they had like a Gym Leco chest press and they had the Preacher curl machine, which I really like. They also have a couple of hammer strength pieces, but we stuck to mostly Panata stuff just because, we don't really get that often here in Manila. We trained with Admund again, and we also bumped into another WNBF Pro, Demi. But more than that, what we really enjoyed in that gym was just the environment. Like, you could see the people there were super serious about lifting. Nobody was really distracted. And it seemed like everyone was doing their sets properly. So that was kind of cool. They also had mirrors everywhere. Good lighting, of course. And I don't know. I think it's just how they laid out the gym. Like, for me, it was just right in terms of the amount of equipment and the space that they had provided for the gym goers. The best part about that was it was only 200 NT for a day pass. So that's really not much. That's actually cheaper than some of the day passes you get here in much less equipped gyms in the Philippines. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I do think we really need to step up our gym game here. After that, we just took a walk, went to the supermarket again, went back to the Airbnb, and then after a good nap, we went to the athlete check-ins. It was fast, really efficient. They had like an entire hall just for the check-ins, and they even had a giant screen that just made it all feel so much more special. More than that, they started on time. They went through all of the poses, the common concerns, everything. And then after that, we had like an athlete or like a pro athlete meet and greet. They did like an interview and they streamed it, and it really makes you feel like a pro. Like in some feds or in some organizations or even within the same organization, you have some shows where you don't feel special, like you don't feel like as an athlete you're being taken care of. You don't feel like the show is for you. But in this case, you walk into the athlete check-in and you already know, okay, this is a special show. This is a show that they run not just for themselves but for the athletes as well. And that in itself was just such a good feeling to have. It was also nice seeing the other Filipino athletes during the check-ins. Athletes, coaches, friends. I would say that was very helpful in terms of calming my nerves. Nice to see other people, especially when you're in a foreign country, don't really understand stuff. Just sort of reassuring given the entire situation. After that, we just went home, slept. Nothing much. So that night or the entire day was pretty safe. End of the day, I think I looked good. Felt good. Felt pretty recovered. And then we move on to the next day. So I can now give you guys the whole show day recap. So show day, first show day, because there were 2 days. First show day was when me and Bella were on stage. We had pro bodybuilding and pro bikini that same day. Jacob was still the next day. So when I woke up on show day, it was okay. It was a decent look, I would say, sort of bordering on flat. Not alarmingly flat or anything, just a little bit not full. And it really wasn't anything to panic about. Little extra food, some more water, some more sodium. Pretty much fixed the problem by the time I got to the venue. So I walk into the venue and kind of amazed. I look at the stage, look at the lights, look at the audience, and then I move on to the backstage where the area is just as big as the audience area itself. It was definitely one of the most comfortable shows to come into, minus of course the air conditioning, which was way too cold. And I do think for most of the shows I've done this year, it's just been way too cold. I think organizers have to realize that these people joining their shows have no more body fat. I'm not sure if it's just because I'm from the Philippines, but people from Taiwan, people from the Philippines, not that far of a difference in terms of climate. So I do think it was just really too cold. So people have to consider that when they're making shows. Food didn't change too much. Of course, I didn't have the usual things available when I would peak here. So I ended up having a sandwich. Unfortunately, that sandwich only had yakiniku sauce inside, which wasn't the best thing to think about on show day, but it did get the job done in terms of like absorption and in terms of like carving up. Everything was pretty much on time that day until we got to the bodybuilding pro show, which I guess they didn't get to account for the total number of competitors. Once they got into the overalls or the awarding and then the overalls, it did take them quite a while. And stupid noob me decided to pump up a bit too early. That was probably the biggest mistake I made during the whole weekend. That shouldn't be happening. I am on the pro level, and I do think something like that, a slip up like that at such a crucial time, was really just a noob mistake on my end. But I guess that's what I get for not taking peaking seriously, at least on show day, for the past few shows. And big lesson for me. So that shall be fixed coming into the next shows. Again, a little bit flat upon waking, and once I started eating throughout the day, I filled up on time, and then I kind of flattened out again just because I pumped up too early. It wasn't a big difference. It was only around like 5 to 10%, maybe, which is usually a forgivable amount. But when you're up against a world champion, actually 2 world champions, there was Dirk, and there was also the World Masters champion from last year. Of course, there was also Lance, who I also met in Malaysia. One of the densest, shreddiest guys I've seen. Like, any mistake you do before you step on stage and on stage will show. If you're flat in any way, or if you're soft in any way, you will see that clearly when you're beside world-class competitors. So, given everything, I am really happy to have been able to take 3rd in that very, very stacked open pro bodybuilding class. I think that makes me 3rd in Asia. So that's that should be something I'm grateful for. But of course, I'm not totally satisfied. I would say I'm kind of disappointed, not in the placing itself, but more on how I got that placing. I do think I underperformed. This was my best look for sure, like ever. And I did come out leaner than I've ever been, but I'm sure I could have brought a better package to that stage, and that is sort of what disappoints me the most. This is the first main show of the year. To be honest, I'm okay with that, but of course, I don't walk into a show not aiming to win it, especially when it's a serious show like this, when it's a big show with a really, really competitive pool of athletes. I also think I did make quite a few mistakes during the whole peak week process, and most of it came from the fact that we were traveling. I do think I took some shortcuts there. When we arrived, we went to the convenience store. Maybe I should have waited like an hour just to make sure we would get to a supermarket, get proper supplies in first. It wasn't really that big of a mistake, but when you're building up on fluctuations, it does affect like the look. I did feel like throughout the week, my look was a bit more inconsistent than usual. At some points throughout the day, I definitely felt a bit flatter or softer than usual. My digestion was a little bit off, like it wasn't going at the same rate or at the same time as it usually would. Of course, I also had to change meal timing, and that kind of threw things off. Same with my lifting schedule. So all of these little things, they do add up, especially when you're like this lean, when you're in contest shape. Like, the little things do build up. It just adds up, and sometimes if you're not careful or if you're not mindful of what you're playing with, it does bite you back. And the hard part there is that, of course, it's peak week, you're in another country, you're sort of in a rush to get everything done. And there's really not a lot of time for you to think about, okay, how do I fix it? How do I get back to my usual state? And when you do get to think about it, sometimes there's really just not enough time actually to bring it back to the way you want it to be. Again, big show, really big class, really packed, really elite class. So again, I am happy with my placing, but I am not quite satisfied with the way I got that placing. And that is just something I will have to work on for the next shows. And now, before I get into what my plan is moving into those said shows, let's just go back to the recap for show day 1. After bodybuilding, after getting third place, it was Bella's turn. She did, of course, the Bikini Open Pro. She also got third, and I think it was a pretty close third for a pro debut. Is actually a really good result, all things considered. So we managed to get 2 bronze medals for the day. And then we moved on to the next day. Day 2 of WNBF Taiwan was mostly men's physique. This was Jacob's show day. I'm sure he'll have a video on that real soon too. But I think he had a pretty fortunate show day. So coming into the show, actually, we were worried about his condition. But after show day 1, where we did have to wait for Bella until the end, plus her drug test. The next day, of course, his show day. When he woke up, it was like sharp. Like it was a really good look. Very, very deep lines for men's physique, which came just at the right time. I think that was also, again, a factor of the food, the activity, the fluctuations we had during peak week. Having to resort to different types of food, particularly with the carb sources, the vegetables, quite a lot of sweet potatoes. It just didn't clear as quick as we expected it to. Thankfully for him, when show day rolled up, he was tight and we were good to go. We were set. And for him, it was a pretty straightforward show day peak. He didn't touch much. I think the biggest thing we had to change was that he had to calm down. You know, he had to lie down, rest, basically the whole time before he would step on stage. He is a bit of an extrovert. So thankfully, in Taiwan, you don't really have a lot of people to talk to because of the language barrier. So all good. And Jacob also very close. I would say he might have been able to place a bit higher depending on judges' criteria on the day. But yeah, he took third too. So that's 3 of us taking third place finishes. So we have 3 bronze medals here. Yay, go team. Overall, we really did have a lot of fun, you know, despite the Super Typhoon experience, despite us messing up a little bit. Show day was just really, really fun. Show day was truly a show, and it was truly a show for the athletes, and you feel it. You felt like everything they did for that show was meant for the athletes, for natural bodybuilding itself, and for the audience who, you know, came to support, which sometimes isn't exactly something you see. You know, you have some shows where you feel like, damn, these guys are just trying to make money off the athletes, off the audience. And this show was not like that. This show really felt athlete centric, which is one of the things I really look for when picking shows, when picking organizers to support. So overall, a really good experience. And if you're from the Philippines and do have any plans to compete abroad, so far I really did enjoy WNBF Taiwan and Malaysia earlier this year, and I'm pretty sure the Singapore show in a few weeks will also be really good. If you're on prep or if you're planning on prepping within the next few years, please, I do think you should consider these shows if you want to understand what a world-class experience is like, and if you want to experience being on stage with really, really strong competitors. Okay, wait, it's getting a bit dark. It's 2:20 p.m. but it's getting a bit cloudy outside. So let me just turn on some lights. Ugh. I don't really like this lighting. I'm looking extra yellow. Yeah. Okay, whatever. I give up. I'm gonna be yellow. Okay, anyway, yeah, more recapping. So end of that show day, we didn't have any extravagant post-show meals. They still have shows. I still have some big shows too. So we settled for a beer. We all just chose one beer each. I had packed chicken breast, some fruit, and that was it. That was a responsible post-show meal. One beer, chicken, fruit. That was it. And surprisingly enough, when you're this lean, one beer is just right. So yes, that is the end of the show day recap. The end of show day 1 and day 2, right? And then we roll up to the next day, which is surprise, Bella's birthday. So happy birthday, Bella. Yes. So that morning we had a session, this time with Edward, a couple of the pros from Taiwan, from Hong Kong, and of course one of our favorite guys, Mr. Dr. Eric Helms, who was one of the people that basically got me into natural bodybuilding, like listening or watching their content from way back, I think like 2015 or 2016, 2017. Eric Helms and the rest of the 3D MJ guys, they were extremely important in building this knowledge base that I have today, which I still use for myself and for my clients. And it was just the icing on top to have been able to lift with him, chat with him, get some feedback from him. He was also a judge during the show. So this just made the very memorable show weekend even more memorable. Jacob, of course, also a fan, was also just fanboying the whole time. So I'm sure he had a good experience there as well. And then the last bit with them, Bella's birthday, looking for cake. We had like a small ass cake, which we split. It was her birthday, so we kind of just went with it. We didn't have much. I still went with a sweet potato and chicken breast and just a tiny bit of cake. So ayun, that was it. That was the whole recap of the experience. And after that, I just had a dinner with my family, who came all the way from the Philippines to watch and to support. We had some senior family members coming in, so that was super cute actually to have them on the show. I'm sure they were scandalized watching me in my underwear, in my tan, but I'm grateful to have had them in my corner on show day. Out of respect and out of gratitude, I did have dinner with them. We did have Chinese. It was quite a lot of food as usual. This is it doesn't matter which country we're at. Every time we have dinner, we do tend to overorder. Thankfully, it was a lot of fish, a lot of seafood, lots of leaner options. Plus, we did order extra servings of vegetables. I did have around a total of 3,000 or 3,200 for that day. Same thing for the next day, flying out. Had around like another 3,000 calorie day. So that would total to around 7 days from that whole Monday to Sunday show day. On average, around like 2,000 cals. Just going back to the previous week where I was digging around like 1,500. So we had a full 7 days at 2,000 and then 2 days at 3,000. That was after the show weekend. So I am feeling quite refreshed. I'm not sure if you guys can notice, like the way I speak right now, the way I'm thinking, it's moving a lot faster than it did last week. So that is the effect of a refeed, or rather 2 refeeds, and what was potentially a diet break for a full week. Now with all of that out of the way, I guess we can proceed to talking about the plans, the post-show plans coming into the next shows. I think the most common bits of feedback for me were that there was more to go in terms of conditioning, and I do agree. Again, my best conditioning so far, but when you're up against 2 really shredded guys with a lot of muscle maturity with a lot of density, I really need to come in at or even more conditioned than them, which means I will continue to dig for the next roughly 6 weeks. Not as aggressive as the way I dug coming into Taiwan. This is going to be more sustained. So this is going to be like a 5 low days followed by 2 high days. So the low days are going to be around 1,600 cals at 10,000 steps minimum. And then we do high days at around 1,900 to 2,000 with somewhere around 8,000 to 10,000 steps. So just a slight, it's not really a refeed, but it is a bit of a higher day. And then we just roll with that. I do think fat loss will come. If I get much more aggressive than that, then there will be risks involved in terms of muscle preservation. So we'll stick to that, pace it, and then just in case, I'll see for maybe like 2 to 3 weeks. And if I'm still lagging behind a little bit, that's when I'll push a bit more. Thankfully, after that whole diet break situation, I do think I'm ready to push. Once again, I'm ready to get to levels of conditioning that I have never seen before, and I didn't, to be honest, like I didn't think I'd have to reach coming into this season. But again, up against the elite, you have to match that level of conditioning that we really just are not familiar with. Now, when it comes to training, I do think symmetry is decent, like it's quite good, but I feel like I did slack a bit on some muscle groups. In particular, while trying to build up my upper chest, I did have to throw like my front delts down on the list of priorities quite a bit. And moving forward, I will be bringing back the high incline presses just to let them catch up, just to let them fill back out. Because I did notice like they just weren't popping as much. My side delts, rear delts, both good. But the front, at least compared to the rest of my torso, was still a little bit weak. Also, surprisingly, my quads were just not quite as separated as I was expecting them to be. This, I'm still figuring out. It might have been a posing error issue, or it could have just been me having too many steps throughout the trip. But I'll figure that out. Most likely also I'm going to be playing around with my posing. One thing I regret is I feel like I didn't put in the work when it came to posing. I would pose regularly. I would pose for a good amount of time, like at least like 10 to 12 minutes per like posing session. Looking back, I feel like I could have done more. I think I felt it like midway or towards the end of the prejudging. I could feel myself fading, and it wasn't just about me fading in terms of like my look, like my flatness. I felt like I was fading with my poses. Like I felt like I couldn't hold my poses as well. There just wasn't enough endurance for me, especially when, you know, you're worked up, you're trying to pose harder than usual. So that's something I need to fix. So most likely I will be doing something like 15, possibly even 20 minutes posing at least like thrice a week, which is a step up from the 2 times a week I do at like 10 to 12 minutes. Hopefully this really does help. This is crucial, I believe, if I want to come in as the most polished version of myself as a bodybuilder. Also, I do think I might play around with my poses. When I was competing here for the first few shows, my poses were meant mainly to make myself look good. I had some poses which I thought personally, like just looking at myself, no comparisons to anyone else, like if I did the pose, I thought it looked the best. But when you get beside other people with different strengths, sometimes your favorite look when you're beside other people is not necessarily the best. Like if I'm doing a back double bicep with my ass out, it's a really different look. I think it's more symmetrical, but it definitely doesn't show enough condition. So I've been trying to fix that. Also with things like my front relaxed or my front double, I do like to keep my ribcage down, but I have noticed that 1, it's a bit more tiring than doing ribcage up. 2, it does hide a bit more with my legs. Like it doesn't show as much detail, it doesn't show as much separation. So I'm gonna try playing around, see if that makes a difference. Hopefully I'll have like one more show before Worlds just to test it out, just to see how it looks on stage, because it has been a while. I think the last time I posed like that was in 2019, and my physique has changed drastically, which is something that I think a lot of people have to factor in when they do shows. When you're having an extended off season and you're working on weak points, when you're working on generally just building more muscle, sometimes the muscle looks different as you get bigger. You have to start letting your posing evolve as you grow. Sometimes if you just stick to the same poses that you're used to, it may or may not showcase your physique properly. Circling back to the training portion, more front delts for me. I've also reduced the overall number of exercises I do per day. Now I've been doing around like 6 to 7 exercises per day at like 2 to 3 sets. But I'm gonna start narrowing that down to like 5 movements per day, keeping it to around like 3 to 4 sets. Reason being, I feel like some of these movements, if I'm being honest and if I'm thinking about like how those movements are going, they're not movements that I can constantly progress on. They're not movements that I can constantly execute consistently, and consistently well, that is. So I'll be narrowing it down. I'll be keeping the exercises I feel are most reliable, the ones that net the most results. Those are the ones I'm going to be spamming. So I'm going to be reducing the ones that I feel like, 1, don't feel as good as they should. 2, the ones that I feel add more fatigue than usual, with the intention of streamlining the programming, streamlining the stimulus, while at the same time keeping fatigue manageable, especially now that I am looking to dig for the next couple of weeks. Back will most likely be very similar to what I've been doing in the past few months. Upper back focused training, but this time I will be a bit more intentional, trying to hit my lats again. So back in 2022, because I was hitting a lot of lats back then, what that resulted into was a nice and wide physique. But my problem that time, after the 2022 season, was I could see that there was a clear lack of thickness, clear lack of density, especially on my upper back. So that has been the biggest point of improvement during the whole off season and even during prep. And I do think I was able to bring that up significantly. I do think I'm a lot thicker, a lot denser now, especially on the back. But I will need my lats to come back. Like, I will need to get that nice symmetry, that nice frame back in order, especially to be competitive on the world stage. Legs, not much to change. With the environment, the new gym that I've been training in, Royal Fitness, I've been skipping out on the leg extensions. Like, the leg extension there is just not the best piece. So that's probably why I ended up doing Smith squats and half squats in the same day. But I might have to find a way to get some more shortened range stuff in my programming. I feel that's something that isn't really talked about so much. People really like thinking about, these will lengthen partial things, these lengthened exercises. But this is just, based on observation, hypothetical and everything. And it could be just a factor of like the difference in the exercise selection itself. But personally, I think when I have more shortened stuff in the program, that's when I get more separation in the said muscle group, which means I will probably have to throw in leg extension again. All right, that's it. That's the rundown. Obviously, the recap of the one day out, the show day 1, the show day 2, and the few days after show day, as well as the plans for the next few weeks. I know it's a bit rough, but that's all I can really manage at this point. Most of the fine details will come once I'm actually in there, once I'm actually in this whole digging phase, once I'm in deep, and once I've actually tested out the program which I've set for myself in theory. So yeah, hopefully by the next video, I'll have more insights regarding that. I'll have more experience with what I'm talking about right now. Okay, if you like that, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this to your friends. And yeah, hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.